Now, just picking one, intelligibility. How can we measure that? How can you describe intelligibility? Basically, there's two ways to measure it. One, actually, I personally think is the better one. It's a very simple where it's an audience like here, and they are listening to some text, and they have to mark down what they understand, how good they understand, and this is actually determining to find out how good the system behaves. So these tests are done as a reference, and then this data is turned into a reference data for later measurements. Now, one thing to know, very important. Our ear has a different sensitivity for the different frequencies. And the reason for that is that Mother Nature was very clever and say, okay, basically we don't have our hearing to enjoy music. The first thing why human beings have ears is to be able to orient for orientation in their own environment. To hear, and now you have to think 20,000 years back, if there might be some predators approaching in the jungle or something like that. So our ear is actually most sensitive in these areas where noises that could become a danger are usually happening. And thus it's not a kind of a surprise that the languages that developed, that the intelligibility to understand these words also happens to be around the same frequencies where our ear is very, very sensitive. So what you can see here in this graph actually is that in the frequency band between 500 Hertz and 2 kilohertz, you already got 77% of the whole intelligibility of speech. And this is very talking about now the sound quality of a system. You see low frequencies, 125, doesn't play a role for intelligibility. And if you think about, if I would take out high frequencies, something like that, you won't understand a word. I think this is pretty clear that we need this portion, 500, 1, 2K, up till 4K, to clearly understand speech and words. Okay, now, in a small room, people sitting around a table talking, no problem. But what in larger venues, big arenas, venues that might have big reverberation times? So there, intelligibility is always a challenge. So what can we do to increase it? We can increase the direct sound. That basically means bring the fader on the console up, but also get more direct sound, which is the sound directly from the speaker to your ear, versus the indirect sound, which is the reflection coming back from the room. And it's easy to say increase direct sound, but that's one. The next thing is decrease reverberation. That might include some damping or padding within the room. Decrease all the reflections as much as possible. And make sure that the frequency range between 500 and 5 kilohertz is as smooth and even as possible. So the typical, what we call smiley EQ curve that you see most in some car hi-fi systems, with all the bass up, all the high frequency up, and all the mids down, this is exactly the opposite what we need for good intelligibility. Because all the bass and all the high has no information of the speech, so has no rule for intelligibility. What we care about most when we look into intelligibility for a speaker system, It's that frequency range. Very, very important to matter. The whole battle of sound is fought in this area. The extra high and the extra bass, which most people immediately, oh yeah, like, this is like some additional spices, some accessory. This is nice to have, but it is not mandatory. This is where, so to say, the music plays. So, and in order to do all these things, make sure you select the right speaker. Because to do all these things, how can you avoid reflections and increase direct sound? Very efficient way is to make sure that your speaker, your sound, is exactly projected where you want it to the audience, and try to avoid to spill as less as possible in the room, the ceiling, the walls, where it will just come back. So the control of projection of sound is a key element in the design of loudspeakers, and this is one of the most important things we devote our time to. Okay, no, I know we just have today. However, I just wanted to give you a quick idea how many speakers. This is just the speaker series. Some of the series have up to 20, 30 models. Electro Voice actually has in the portfolio. And of course, for the individual markets, for permanent install, pro music, concert sound, dedicated cinema system, and commercial applications. Huge range of audio applications, and an even bigger range of speaker systems. And not gonna talk about all of them, but one point here is to make. One of the reasons we have so many is that there are so many different applications, and we just want to make sure that for each type we have the dedicated offering.